Salut coders, this is Bisky here. Welcome back to our channel. Warm greeting to those who are joining us for the first time. On the previous tutorial, we created a user with the username code with Bisq, and this tutorial is a continuation from where we left, and we want to save the user details so that we can like gender, date of birth, etc for that user, and we want to integrate with the database. We are going to use MySQL database. So let's test this user if he's able to log in. And on previous tutorial, when created this user, an email was sent to verify the account. So I click the email and verify the account. If I come to this one, kick log dashboard, the account has been verified. If I click here, it showed that the email is verified. So we want to test how to log in with this, and we are going to use Postman. This is going to be our user ID, which is code with Bisq. So with Postman, we have to hit this endpoint, which is kicklogcodewithbisq.com, which is our domain that we are using, this subdomain. And we have to specify your realm, and the realm is Bisq music and protocol, which is OpenID connect and then a token. And we have to enter a client ID. This one we created on the previous tutorial. The username, which is code with Bisq, and the password that we are going to use to log in, and the grant type is password. So this username and password is the one that we created here. This was the password and this was the username. So if I hit this endpoint and click send request, this user is able to log in and we get the access token. It means the new user that we created on the previous tutorial was able to verify the email, and the user is now able to log in on the application. So we want to continue to save the details like the profile of this user. So the profile of this user, we have this, let's go to this. So we have this one, let me try to zoom. So here we have this model which is called user, and when we started, we created a user service, and in user service we want to save all these details, and we want to save profile pictures, and we shall integrate with the BunnyNet. But for now we need to add this model, and we want to integrate with the MySQL database with Spring. So let's get started to add the dependencies for this. So in our user service, we want to add dependencies for database connection. As you can see right now, this project is not connected to a database. There's no database dependencies for MySQL and JPA. So we want to add those dependencies. So on our PowerPoint, I think if you go to this page number 10, we need to add these dependencies. So let's add these dependencies. Then we can sync. So if you try to run this project, we are going to have error of database configurations. So let's try to run this. So as you can see, after running this project, is mentioning about database connection. So we must configure MySQL database. So what we can do, let's add the MySQL configurations. From our PowerPoint, you can see here we have Spring, the data source, and we have the JPA. So we need to add these configurations. So let's copy these configurations and add them into our project. And also we need the app. So let's copy. and add these details here. So here for the database name, I can call it users DB, and here this is the root, which is my DB username and password, and here you can add your password. So here I just say I will enter my password, and the port is 3360, and we are using MySQL. As you can see here, this is the username, and the configuration of the database are in here. So that's why I say app DB username. And for JPA, it will generate we want our application to generate tables with using our models, and here the database is MySQL, and we want to update. If you add a new column, the table will update with a new column without writing the script like a out table, add column, what. So the JPA will do the magic for us. So these are the configuration that you need for database connection: the URL, the username, the password, and for JPA to manage how the database is being created and saving. These are these strategies, and we are using improved naming strategy. So if you try to run our application, let me commit. So let me run the user service again and see if the database is now connecting. So as you can see, the database has been connected. The issue is now gone. So we are now okay with the database connection on our project. So what we can do next is to go to this Java. We want to, let's structure here. Let's create a new package and call it model. Let's create another package and call it service. Let's create another package called repository. Let's create another one called DTO. So by doing this, I think we can start to create our model. So to creating this model, it's easy. We have to create a new model called user. It's if I open this image, so we want to create a model called user. This is the model with these fields. So let's do that right now. And what I can do, I can minimize this and do this here. And I want to create a new model. And this one, I can call it user. Let's add these columns: string ID. Let's make it private string ID. Local date. We can call it DOB, date of birth. Country ISO true. It's a string. I explained these fields before. And we have type. This is response. This is for profile picture. So I can say I don't want to say profile pic image. I want to say storage ID. Here I want to say storage type, a storage provider. So what you need is just a user ID. And for artist, let's ignore about the artist now. Here, let's add the language. So you can, your default language can be English, or you can be French, or those. So here, because we want to save this into the database, so what we can do here, we need to add this one called at entity. So by adding an entity, we need to specify this. We have this attribute user is supposed to have a primary key. So the ID is going to be a primary key. This ID is going to be a user ID. So maybe I can say user ID, and I can mark this. But for simplicity, the ID is just for user. We can add this annotation called it ID. The error is gone. We need to add getters and setters. I think we added Lomboko. So we have to say add getter and add setter. Right now, I think we are okay. So if you try to run this project, it will create these fields for us. So before we do that, before we run this one, we want to add an enumeration types of storage types. So for storage providers, we can have multiple storage providers such as AWS, we can have BunnyNet, we can have Google Cloud Storage ID, and we can have Upright. There are so many. So for us to be able to use this one, I think we must create an enum called storage providers. Let me create that one. And I can call it storage provider. Here is supposed to be an enum. So BunnyNet is an example of storage provider. S3. These are types of storage provider that we want to use. So let's go back to our user, and we want to change here. We were saying that this is a string. We want to make it as an enum. So after making it enum, so the database does not know which field, because the database only knows the strings, integers, but this type of enum, it's custom. So for JPA, it won't know which type of this, and it's going to have an error. So we have to add it enumerated, this one. So by doing that, the value in this one, it will change to so if you do this, when you save, if it's BunnyNet, it will save as zero, and this one it's saved as 1, and this one is saved as 2. So we don't want this default value. So if you go to enumerated, the default value, it's odd now. So we want to change the value here. So we just do this. We need it to save it enumerated as a string. So the default, it will be saved as string. So it will save as BunnyNet or S3, not as 1 or 2. If you don't specify this enum type, it will save as ones and zeros. So that's all from here. So if we try to run this project, a new table will be created with these details. So let's run this. So if we scroll up here, I think we have, you see a new table is being created. This one with these values, storage provider enum, like this. So let me show you for me, I use the I use data grep. For me, I use data grep. So in our Explorer, I have this database which is called userdb that we specified. Let's look the tables. We have this one table which is called user, and in this table we have country ISO true, date of birth, language, storage ID, storage provider, and it's of type what? It's a type of enums, and we have the type, the user type. So we are now okay, and this ID is the one that is our primary key. So what we can do now, we have the table. So let's go to the let's create a repository so that we can save these details. So to create a repository, we need to create a repository which is responsible for saving this. So we can go to repository and create a new Java. It's an interface, and we call it user repository. Remember. Then let's extend JPA, a repository, and the JPA repository, it requires the class which is the user, this one, and also an ID. If it's the ID is a string or a long, you have to specify that it's your ID. So in this user, you can see the ID is a string, because in our key clock, if you go to our key clock for this user, you can see this ID is a string. So that's why we said our user ID is a string. So this is going to be the same user ID. So now we are okay. So we extend the JPA repository. This JPA repository, it extends also a CRUD repository, this repository paginations. So it has methods like save, get, delete that we are going to use when we want to delete or to get details. So now we are done with the repository. So we need to create a service called user service. So we can create a new method in our service. We can create a new interface. User service, and let's make it an interface. So if you want to save a user, we can say after saving a user, we can say let's do this user save So if you want to get a user by ID, we can get here, get by ID. To delete a user, make it void. Here I prefer, okay, delete user by ID. So after doing this, these are the basics that we want, and for update we just do this user. So we need to add another class which is the implementation of this service, and we just say imp, and this class implements, you know, in Java, if it's a class, it can implement an interface, not extend an interface. So if you just follow these steps, you can minimize errors. And what we can do here is just add a service, so that we avoid null pointer exceptions when we want to use this service. So it will be added into version of control of Spring Boot. So after doing this, we added this, and here let's add at SL. This one is for Lombok if you want to use logs. And from Lombok, it required Axe constructors. So we don't have to write constructors. So for our fields, just say private. We want private final. We want to use user repository. So this user repository, it has a model of your class. So it requires a class which has this and which has this at entity. So for this, we want to save the details. So if you want to save the details for the first time, it's easy. We can just say user repository. This is the simple way. Save user. So by doing this, we can save the user details into the database. And to update, we just use the same method, but I made an error here. Usually for an update, we must have a string, which is an ID, which is a user ID. And I copy this. Let's come back to our implementation. Here we have an error because that method wasn't existing. So what we can do, so before I do this, let me do this here. Here we want to get a user. So to get a user, we just say repository find by ID, which is the user ID. And you to return an optional or we just say error else equals to null. So if the ID does not exist, it will return a null. So that's okay here. To delete, we just say repository. So we can say repository. Sorry. We can use delete by ID and pass the user ID, and we can delete this record. So we have performed all the CRUD. For updating is just the same, but what we want to do, we just want to call this method first. And you pass a user ID. So we make sure that the details that we want to update must be there. If it's now, so we can check if the ID exists. You can do that by just doing this none now, and we can import this. If the user is not equal to now, we can call this user which came from here, and we can set the ID from user one from the where we obtain it. Or we can just set this user ID is the same, and we can call this method. Or if it doesn't exist, we can throw an exception. So we shall have custom exception, and I will show you how to have a custom exception. We can say user does not exist for ID, this one which is your ID. So we know that we throw the exception for that user which is not exist. So by doing this, we are now able to update an existing user, to get a user, to delete a user, and also to save a user. So after doing this, we need to add a controller so that we can start to test our implementation. So here we need to add a controller, and we can just say, or we can call it a controller or an API. So this one I can call it user API. So to differentiate this, you can see if you are in repository, we extend a repository, and you can see this is a bin. It means this class is able to work on the database layer. And for service, this is responsible for saving details into the database. And you can see we have this bin which is added in our version control, and we can use this one. But to use this service, we need to add it into our controller so that when I call this user service, so let's go to our user API, and I can say private final, and we are using this user service. But you can see we need to add as a constructor. So to make it a constructor, I told you can use it. This one, it requires Axe constructor, and it's the same as creating a constructor like this. If you say generate constructor, this way is the same with this. So for us to make a code readable, we can remove this and we can just do this. So this is constructor dependency injection in Spring. So after doing this, but you can see this bin is not there. You can see this icon which is showing that it's a bin. It's being in the inversion of control. So to do that, we can add this one called address controller. You can see it's now picking up this as a bin. So this class is now added into our version is now added in the version of control. So the other thing that we can do, we can say add request mapping. We can just add a request mapping. So in here, let's create a new method, and this method I can say public. They must be public because they are facing the internet. They are facing the internet, so make sure these methods, you can make them public. And I can say response entity. We want to return an object of type user. And we can import this, and it's coming from our package. And this one, it's save user. So for saving a user, here we must pass a user, this user model, right? And after passing a user model, we have this method which is user. We have this service, and this service just say dot save, and you want to save this user, right? So we are supposed to return a success for this. So when creating a new entity, the best standard, we are creating a new resource. So when creating a new resource, we just say response entity dot response entity status http status dot created. This one created dot build. Here, after creating a new resource, it means we are going to we are creating. It means if we do this, a return 201 is being. We are getting a response code 201. It means something new record has been created, and even if you update, you can return also 201. But you can see right now we didn't specify with this URL. And for this URL, we didn't specify, is this method, is it a post, is it a put, or is it a get? So in Spring it's easy. We just say add post mapping. By adding this, it means our method is now a post mapping, but we didn't specify the path. For the path of this thing, we just call it users, like this. So if our method, we just say users and just do this, so we can save we can send a JSON object of type user with these fields, and it can save into our database. But we have one thing: for this to be mapped, for your JSON object to be mapped to this model, we need to add a request body. This one. So that's all. So if we run our application and code this endpoint, we'll be able to save a user. But before we do that, I think I didn't add configuration for Swagger because I prefer to use the Swagger. So let's add the Swagger configuration, and we can copy them from. We can copy these configurations from here. Let's copy from auth. So in our auth, remember, we have these configs. So let's copy this package called config and go back to user. Let's go back to user and create a new package called config. And we can paste. So after pasting this, we are going to have issues with the security. But for this one, for this, we don't need this. So what you can do, let's delete this. We don't need keycloak dependencies here. So let's delete these keycloak dependencies. But the bin, we will need it later. And we don't have, we need to add this dependency for security. So let's go back to auth. So let's go back to POM file, and we also need this Swagger. So let me copy the Swagger and also the dependencies for security, and you can come back to our user services, and let's add this dependency for security here. For Swagger, we are okay, and this one is for Realm. We don't need this dependency because auth is the one that is doing those things. For security, for single sign-on, we need this. We need this dependency for Spring security and this for single sign-on. So after adding this, we can get these dependencies. Right-click on your POM file in Maven. And you can see all the errors are gone. But we have another issue here. We need a resource for this, which is we need the Realm ID of our project to work for single sign-on. So this microservice must register to the keycloak server so that if you send a request, we'll be able, so that every user will be able to interact with this endpoint. Right now we added security. We see we added security on this service. So we have added security on this one. Let's remove this. So we have added security. So if you want to access this service, you must log in first before you access this service. So for you to access this service, this project must be registered to our keycloak. And for single sign-on, this microservice will also use the configuration for the same configuration that is in auth service. So let's add the same configurations. So if you go to our configuration repo and we can open the auth. So for auth, we have this configuration. So we need this one. We need this one only for JWT. And we also need this config also in our user service. So in our user service, let's add this, which is the client ID that we are using to log in. And we need, for Spring Security or Auth True, we need this one. This is the URL of our domain, which is keycloak. So let me do this. Let's come here. Spring. So for our domain, here we just say app keycloak domain. Keycloak. So here we just say app.keycloak.domain. And for the realm, here we say keycloak, and for realm, it's going to be, we copy this. So for the realm, this is our realm, Bisky Music. Sorry. This is our realm, and our domain, it's keycloak.code with Bisky. So it's HTTPS. I configured this to be HTTPS. So this is our domain. So if I do this, it will reference to this app keycloak domain. This is the path app keycloak domain, app keycloak realm. Yeah. So after doing this, we have managed to add single sign-on. Commit add keycloak single sign-on in user service YAML. So we shall do the same on other microservices, which is a music service. We shall do the same, and when we are doing that, you will see it will be easy. We will just come and copy. So after doing this, we need to come back here in our auth service. We just need to do, last time I told you how to configure the Spring. So we just copy this, come and copy this, and come to our user service and go to our application so that it can load the Swagger. So the domain of our application on all microservices the same, com.code with Bisq, and this one is for, it will load all the beans for Swagger. So after doing this, I think we are now okay. If we run this project, we'll be able to save a user. So let's run the project. So right now you can see this is our path, and the path it users, this is the context path. So before I do that, let me go back to the config repo, and I want to go to this gateway server. I want to know the actual path. Okay, it's called user. Yeah, it's okay. So what you can do here, we just come here. For this Swagger URL is for this one. It was for you for auth service. So we just come here, or I can say duplicate this one, and I can remove this. We must remain at context HTML, and here it's supposed to be user. And for the path is for the port, it's not running on 7090. Let's check the port here. For user service, it's 7020. Then we can do this. As you can see right now, we have one method which we created, which is for users to save users. So this method, you can see these are the details that we created for this user module. For this user module, these are the same details. So we want to save these details. So to save these details, let's come here, and I want this ID for this user code with BISC, and I will say try out here. And for date of birth, I will leave it as it is. Country ISO, I can say B type. For type, let me leave it to now. I can't remember why I put that type. So far, we don't have storage ID. Let's remove it. And we don't have storage provider. And for language, I'm going to say EN for English. But we are going to have an issue here. When I click this, you see, because we added security, so we can't save this if you are not authenticated. So we need to sign in. So the user who is going to do this must sign in first. So what I can do, we already have this one. So we can send a request. This user that we created code with BISC. So this is the user that is creating the profile. So if we come back to our URL, you have to click this authorize, and then we have to paste this. That's why I said we use the Swagger, and we say close. So now let's test this. As you can see now, it's returned a 201. So a user has been created. As I told you, for response, you have to return a 201. So it means a record has been created. So let's check in our data group if you have one user here. You can see this is the user that we created for code with BISC. So it means right now we have managed to save these user details like date of birth, language, and also this one we can use on the application, especially if you want to filter things based by age. Maybe some of the video is for above 18 years, because we are going to allow visuals on the application. So the users must specify their date of birth. In terms of username and in terms of details like first name and full name, we already added those details. So by now we have managed to save a user. But the problem that I'm not happy with this, that we are exposing the whole user like the way it is in the database. So we want to have something. I told you here we have a DTO. So we have this class, and this class I can call it user DTO. So on this user DTO, we want to have also the same fields like this one. But later on we shall refactor this. But I want to show you how to, so that we hide our details on the JSON. So it must not match the same. It must not be the same. So here for language, we can just say, so that someone cannot reverse proxying here, cannot reverse our database. For date of birth, we can leave it as it is, but I will show you later how we can change this. So here we just add a getter. and etc. So we want to use mapstruct. So the mapstruct is the one that's responsible to change this module user DTO to this user. So to do that, so when I'm passing a request, I'm supposed to change this thing. So what I can do is to come here. Let's go to our PowerPoint. I think I have the dependence for that. Yes, we need to add this plugin. Let's add this plugin for mapstruct. So let's add this plugin for mapstruct. And I can say module. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to do this here. So just add this here. Let's add this plugin. And we need to set a version here for mapstruct. And we are using Java 17. So in here, let's add this version. So in here, we have added this dependency, which is for mapstruct, and we are using this version 1.5.2 now. So we have to sync our project. So while it's syncing our project, let's create a new package called mapper. So after creating a package mapper, let's call it DTO mapper. And it's supposed to be an interface, edit as an interface, or just say abstract based on their documentation abstract class. Then here we need to add an annotation called @mapper. It's coming from abstract. And for component model, this one, we just say Spring. So you can see after adding @mapper, as I told you, you have to check if your thing is now added into invasion of control, so that you don't have now pointer exception when trying to use this one. So after doing this, we can just say you can convert easily your user model into a DTO or a DTO to a model. So what you can do is just say user. This one, we just say map to user DTO. Here we must make it public, abstract, like this. And you can do also the opposite. The user DTO, you can convert it to a user, as simple as this. So we can convert one object to another the easiest way. So if I run this, you can see it will generate the class, it will generate the methods, which the implementation. So this is the easiest way that you can map from your one object to another. You can see it shows that there's a logic for converting this one to another. So if I click this arrow to go to the implementation, you can see this is the implementation. It just takes the DTO details and map from to user, or here it will check also the now and also map the user into user DTO, even the storage providers. So it's easy if you are working with this. So to use this in our application, we just do what we did before. So in our API, let's come to our API. You can do this. And we just say, call it this a mapper. And in here, we are not supposed to return a user. We can return a user DTO. Maybe if we have some details that you don't want to expose to the user, we can map them into a DTO. And here, we have to pass a user DTO. Now, the problem is that this user, it requires a user model. Right now, we are returning a user DTO. We are getting a user DTO. So what we can do, we just use this mapper.map. Since we created that method that convert one method to another, and we just pass this user. So by doing this, it mapped to that user. That's all. So I shall have more implementation, like how we can map using mapping variables, like mapping from, like if the columns like are different, the fields are different. So far we have only few fields, so I don't think we have to do much things here on converting maybe the country ISO to something. Maybe when the request is coming from front end, it's not country ISO 2, maybe it's a country code you want to convert to country ISO 2. I will show you how we can do that in future videos, but for simplicity, we just do this. So after doing this, we can add other endpoints, which are for get. So we can get by ID these users. We can get by ID. So here we just say, which is the user ID. And this one, if you see a / and parentheses, it means it's a path variable. And you know our user ID is a string, so that's why I say here ID. So this ID must match this. So if you want to get here, we just say get by ID. And here we can pass the ID, which is the user ID. And it will return a user. So what we can do, we just come here, copy. Here we can return a success here. We can say OK, which is a 200. We are not creating a new resource. So we just say OK. And we to return a user, but it requires a user DTO. But right now it's not a user DTO, it's a user module. So we just say mapper like this .map, and it's now a DTO. So it converted to DTO. So if you want to delete this user, the delete here it's supposed to be get mapping. It's a get method. Here it's supposed to be a delete mapping. We want to delete this user, and this resource. And here you can just do this. You can just say void. I will show you all the tricks here. If you do this, just say it response body. It's also okay. Yes, we are not supposed to return anything. We just say here it's get user by ID. Here get user by ID. Here is delete user by ID. And we say user. You just say user service.delete user by ID from our path variable, and we pass the ID. So the user has been deleted. So after doing this, for our put, we can do the same. Or if you want to update a user, here we have to change it to put mapping. This one, and we want to pass the ID of the that you want to update, and here you just say update user. And we need a request body here. I told you we need to update the details. So for the body, we just say add request body, and we want this one. The put is the same as the post, but post is like we are creating a new record, but put we are updating an existing record. Whether you're updating a name or a surname or anything, it's just the same. So the same logic that you want to do is this one. So if we manage to update a record, so here it's save, but here we have our method called update that we created, update, and it requires a user model and also an ID here, which is a user ID. And we can pass this. So with this logic, we can update a user. So let me run the application and test all these implementations. So let's go back to our interface, to our Swagger. Since we added new resources, we added new endpoints here. If I try to do this, we need to refresh this page so that it loads all other APIs for user. So if I do a get, if I take this user ID, so if I take this ID, this one, we want to get the details of this ID for that user. So if I put that ID, I say try out, and we want to get this detail from the database. These are the profile of the user. We are getting authentication issue, so we need to log in first, send a request. We need to add this bearer token. Click authorize, paste the bearer token, close here, and click the get. You can see we have retrieved the details of that user. So we want to update also the details of that user. We can come here with our put method, and we can say try out, and we put this. So I want to copy these details that we already have. Then I want to paste here, and I want to change this country ISO to US, and these fields I can make them now. And for EN, let me change to FR, and it's for this ID. If I remove this, it doesn't matter, it will update this, and I'll say execute. You can see, let's check why we're having an error. So I have an issue, it returned an error here. As I can check here, it's saying the user does not exist for ID. This is because here I pasted a token instead of a user ID. So I have to get this user ID. This is the user that I want to update. So it means our implementation is working fine. So then I will click execute again. So if I run execute, it returns 201. If you go to this database and refresh the details here, we change it to US, and here we change to FR. You can see we have managed to update our user profile. So the next thing we are done with this saving of user details. So we need to update the profile picture of the user. So when user is doing the registration, we need to update also the profile picture. So to do that, we are going to use BunnyNet. So let me show you how we can use BunnyNet. So you can have to navigate to BunnyNet. This is the storage provider that you want to use. So you can go through the importance and read more about BunnyNet, the storage, the stream CDN. But for images, you want to use its storage. So on our BunnyNet, you can read more if you want to know more about the BunnyNet. For me, I have an existing account. If you don't have an account by now, you can just click get started and you can sign up or use your Google account to log in. But for me, I have an account, so I have to log in to my existing account. So let me log into my existing account. So after logging into your existing account, you can do the account setup. There are already videos for account setup. And for me, I have to go to storage zone and I need to add a storage zone, a new storage zone. And this one, I can call it Bisky Music. And you have to select any storage tier. Here I'm just using a standard one, which is cheap. And the main storage zone, I'll just keep it this one. So may you enable geo-replication so that your files can be stored somewhere for backup. I just chose one, which is Europe, and I add the storage zone. So far, I don't have any files in here, and I can create a folder. And this one, I can say profiles. That's why I want to store profile images, and I just say profiles. So things that you need here, you can go to this API accesses and we can have these access keys. We can use this as a username, and this is going to be our storage host, and you have the password, and you can copy the password. So you can copy your password, and you can copy your music, and you can add this to the application. So let's go to the application. Let's go to the... So we need to go to user service. So in here, we have to add properties for BunnyNet and add those values. So let me add those values. So we have added this configuration for now, which is BunnyNet and storage primary URL, which is this one, storage bunnynetcdn.com. And I also add this configuration. So far, I didn't add CDN based URL, where we are going to the URL that we are used to get the image, so we can add it later. And we have the storage zone, which is this one. This is going to be our storage zone, Bisky Music. And also I have added this API key. I can just delete this. I can call it storage URL token key, which is this one that I copied from this password. So the next thing that you want to do, you want to integrate with the Java, is the Java that they wrote. So we need to say BunnyNet. Let's say BunnyNet Java SDK. So for BunnyNet Java SDK, we can download it here. You can download these files, and these are the table of contents, which is the upload directory, download object, how you can upload your files onto, how you can download these files to BunnyNet. So we can do this. You can clone this project. The files that we are more interested in are the storage API, these files. So clone this project or download this project and you copy these files. So for me, I already have these files, so let me download these files. So let me add these files into my project. So I can go to user service, and on my services here, I can create a new one. I can put that folder, which is Bunny, new directory. And in my DTO, I have to add this file, which is the PCDN object, and it's going to have these files that are generated by BunnyNet. So I think if we have done this, we are now okay. Let me import. So I have added these files, this package, which is Bunny, CD and storage, and this is the same. These are the files with this object and storage. All of these files are now there, and this is the CDN object. I put it in the DTO and the storage and the converter and token signer. You can just copy it or you can take it from my project. So after we have done this, we need, let me close all tabs. So what we need now is to go to the, here in our service, I need a BunnyNet service. I can create a new service, a new interface, which I call BunnyNet. So far, let me just put the implementation. And in this interface, we need to save the files. We need to save the file. We need to upload the files. So we need a method to upload the files. So let me just say public void upload images, or I can say upload profile picture. Remember, in our model, we have the model, we have the storage provider. So we need to pass this. We need also to know the storage provider. So for this one, the storage provider, we need to pass a storage provider, which is we already know that it's BunnyNet storage provider, and we need a multi-party file, and I can call it a file, and we need file name, and here I can just, we can pass a key. So maybe a user can send a key so that we cannot override the existing key. So I can say string. So this one is coming from request. I can say request string dot format, and it's going to be profiles. Then I can say %, then file name. So I can check if this one is not empty. string utils, let me use this one, dot is not empty. This one, if it's not empty, my key will be the request key, like this. So this is the file, like the key. So if you are storing this file into the database, you can come here to the file manager. So it's going to be profiles and then the image name. So this is going to be our key. So we can come back again here. So it's going to store profiles plus file name. Then it can be saved here. So the next thing that we want to do, we want to get the bytes, a byte array. So we can say bytes equals to mod party get bytes. So these bytes are coming from the images. So I can add this to the method. It's okay. So we want to get the images. So we want to send as bytes. So it's okay if it's like this. So what we can do in this implementation, I want to add these configurations that we have, that we added. We need to add this configuration from the repo, which are this configuration. So we can just come and let's go to the user service, and we want to copy. I think there's somewhere we added here. I want to copy this so in here I will just say BunnyNet let me look for the right key. BunnyNet, the problem is that they are not in this service, they are in here. So what I can do is just copy this and come back to our user service, and I just do this. The correct key is this one. So this is going to be our primary storage, and let's have another key which is going to be our base URL. Let's add another key here, which is the zone where we are storing. In S3 it's like a bucket. Here we have the key. Key is potent for security. I think with these keys we'll be able to save our details, and we know where to copy these keys. So after adding this, we need to configure this. We need our BunnyNet CDN storage. This one. We need to initialize we need to initialize this object. We can initialize it into our bin, but let me do this. Private final. We can refactor this, and here we just say this one's going to be a service. It required Axe constructor. We can add a method called initialize public void, or you can call it init. That is called when the application starts. When we first this will be called as a post, and we call it a post construct. So this method will be called as soon as the application starts, and we can now initialize this object here equals to new, and there we need to pass the storage zone, which is this one, and we need to pass also the key. So we need to pass our API key. So here I made a mistake where I said token key is different. I can show you later what is a token key and API key. So I think we have this way. I said token key. We must have also API key. This one is called API key. The one that we added is an API key. So we need to add an API key, and we can go back here into our configuration repo, and this one we can make it an API key. The API key is the one that we copied. Just change the name, and here I think we need to pass this primary URL. This primary URL, which is going to be, if you go to configuration repo, auth user, this is going to be the primary URL, this one. So we need this detail, and this one, our object. So we need to upload this file. So to upload, we just say, then we say byte array input stream. It's a new byte array input stream, and we can it accepts the bytes here, and we can pass our key, and also an exception can be thrown here, so we can add to the signature. So from here it's now okay. We can upload our email, so this one is not necessary here. So what we can do, we can just create, now we can create a service, which is BunnyNet service, without the implementation, without let's create this interface, new Java class, which is an interface, and you can come back here and we can copy this, and it's a void upload, and you can come here and you say implement. So and right now I know here we can see we have we can say it override. You can edit override here, so that we know that this is the correct method that we are saving. So after doing this, we are now okay. So let's add in our user API, we can create a method which accepts a multi-party, and this one is going to be an upload profile image. Say upload profile image. So here it's users ID, then we say upload profile, and here we just say it request param, and it's going to be a multi-party file, and the name we call it a file, and here it's a path variable. This ID, and we need to upload. So I think I'm thinking something, we need to do this in this user service. and here it's allow a user ID, say upload profile picture. Then it allows string key and also string and multipart file, which is the file that you want to upload. And in the implementation, let's implement this. And here we just say this, and we can import this one. Or we can also pass string, storage provider. In future we can need this, so let me do this. So after passing the storage provider, we need to upload this in here. First thing is to get this user, if the user exists, or I just do this. Usually we know that the user exists, so let me just do this. Then after doing that, I can take this thing and say dot upload, and I'll pass a file. What else? File name, for now I can just say now, and I can pass a key. Yes, to our interface to have that it throws an exception. So after this we know that the file has been uploaded. So after it has been uploaded, we already get the user ID, we already have the user, so we need to update this user, and I can say user dot storage provider, which is the storage provider, and storage key, which is the storage ID. I can pass this key, which is this key. So this is going to be our storage key, means the file name of the profile. We can save the file name into the database, and then I can save this user repository dot save. So we have managed to save our file, our file here. So far we did implement this logic. So we have user service here in the controller. In our user API, we want to use this. So what you want to do, we need to say upload profile image. We have user ID, which is this ID. We have the key, so we just duplicate this. So what I can do here, it's a key. So I can pass a key here, and also a file, which is a mod path, and I need a provider. Here it's a storage provider. It's a path variable also, and I can pass this. and an exception can be thrown. Okay, we can handle this, and we are going to update with these details. So everything here, I think everything is okay. So if you follow this, we'll be able to save our image into the BunnyNet. And this one, we don't need this configuration. And the application starts, it will upload if everything is okay. We need to update the details of the user with this new key. So here I just say it was so what I can do here, I can return a key. We are more concerned about the key here, and here we just say string. So we are passing a key here, and we get this key. We can get a safety key, which is this one, and you can use this one. So after doing this, we can run our application. Profile user. Here I just say upload user upload profile. So here I made a mistake. You see, it's a path variable of which is supposed to be for an ID. It's a path variable, but for other fields they are request parameters. So you can see the issue is solved. So let me run the application and test. So our application is now running on this port 7020, and it's a user. So let me go to here and say, so this is the user ID that we have. So let's get the user. Yeah, we have this user. As you can see right now, we are not seeing the browse file, the file that you want to upload. So I think we have to add this, the consume. Here we just say values. And we can import so that we know that it will know that this is a mod path. Let's rerun the application. So let me reload and see if we are able to see the button. Yes, we can see the button. Let me try out here. Yeah, we can have the file. So let me just download a demo, a image, profile, image. So let me browse this file on desktop. This one, it's a JPG. Then my key from my user ID is this one. I'll copy this. For the key, it's going to be .jpg. For the storage type, I want to say BunnyNet. So after doing this, we need to log in again. We need a token. We can come back here. Let me try to authorize this, and you click close, and let me execute. We can see we got a 201. We don't have any exception. You can see the file has been uploaded, and we updated our user. So let's check if the file exists here, and I can reload here. here the file has been uploaded here. It's because I added a wrong file name. So what we can, on the request, I have to say this thing must be stored into profiles. Let's update that into the profiles. Then I can execute again, and let's reload this. You can see the file has been uploaded. So this is how, if you go to our database, you can see in the our storage ID, we have this storage ID, and we have now provider, which is BunnyNet. So for me to access this file, I have to add a pull zone. So what I can do is to come to access this, I must add a pull zone here, and I can say connect to a pull zone, and I just use one of my one of my pull zone, and I created this before, so I just say I can use this one and I can connect to this one. So if I go into here, I think I can copy a URL now, so I can access this publicly. You can see I will be able to access the image public with this public URL on BunnyNet. So I've showed you how to integrate with BunnyNet, how to create repositories, and how we update our profile pictures, and add a user, update a user, and delete a user profile. So let's meet to another tutorial. Salut coders.